silky nose. I kissed her head, smelling the oily, rich scalp, and patted her bottom. I looked down at my shoes. I'd forgotten to follow orders and buy myself a new pair of leather brogues. So on the day I was to marry you, the sanest day of my life, I revisited the place where I'd cracked up. The sun made the back of my neck sweat as I looked at a line of graves for the men who died during the Jaffa riots of 21, including Yosef Chaim Brenner, remembered primarily as a victim of murder rather than a talented artist. Others, like Chaim Nachman Bialik, lurking at the lowest point of the graveyard nearest the sea, had found homes in concrete sepulchres. The most imposing monument, because it stands taller than any other and is made of morning black marble, is a memorial to the Jews of Zdunska Wola in Poland, whose nightmare began slowly, strange accusations, intangible feelings of humiliation, until, in September 39, the Germans entered the village and torched the synagogue. Checking my watch, I wandered over to the Poets' Corner where the politicians Arlozorov and Dizengoff have situated themselves. Max Nordau's sullen mausoleum, with its meter-thick concrete frame and metal door, sealed with a rusty padlock, has allowed him to brood in peace for years. Probably best that he was lying surrounded by bomb-proof concrete in the middle of Tel Aviv, hot, naked, and sweating around him. He's happily blind in his cave, sulking away the afterlife. At the Levant Fair in '32, when the first radio show was broadcast from Palestine under the authority of the British Mandatory Government, the city's mayor, Dizengoff, I knocked a knuckle on his gravestone, expressed his desire that there should be a permanent station, a marker in the sand, to be known as Radio Tel Aviv. The sounds would travel to the corners of the universe. We are here, we are alive. If only the Jews of Europe had managed to get, within shortwave of Palestine, to hear at first hand what was taking place, then millions might have been saved. Radio Tel Aviv died the year before Dizengoff was buried. The children of Zdunska Wola found their deaths elsewhere. I realized how lucky I was to be standing in the cemetery. I decided somehow to get us plots under the willow, a wedding present, so that we could be here together a long time after, in death. One day before I was born, the end of the world had been announced on the radio. Even on our wedding day, I was troubled. The past won't let go. The happiest day of my life, but still the shadows lurk. And I want you to understand that I'm not mad. It's just they're always there. The worst takes place. It did in '73. The best does too. And I took your hand, and the rabbi bent over and placed a glass wrapped in silk on the stage. You encouraged me with a squeeze of my fingers. I slammed my foot down. I wish I'd got proper shoes. I hopped about and kissed you. What sweet agony. People clambered onto the stage to congratulate us. I jumped about holding my foot and looked at the sole of my shoe. A shard of glass had stabbed its way into the rubber. Inside was squishy with blood. I accidentally put my foot down and screamed, and you rushed towards me. I've got a piece of glass in my foot, I said. We're supposed to spend some time together contemplating our marriage. Instead, I can bandage your foot. You're such a lunatic. I know. Don't think about it too much. You'll want a divorce. In your mother's bathroom, you untied my shoe and my foot squirted blood. Your dress got spattered, but you pressed a tissue to my wound. I'm sorry, I said. Don't worry. Your dress. It's only a little blood. I'm sorry, I said. What for? Everything. Nothing's happened. We're going to be fine, you said. Fine. Fine, you said. During the first dance, I stumbled twice. I was attempting to ballroom dance on a roughed-up carpet, on uneven ground, on a foot recently knifed by glass because of the symbolic act of remembering the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem. I limped about the dance floor, having invested time and effort in classes for that very moment. I tried my best. I almost pulled off the tango. I hit the drink stand and the alcohol cauterized the pain. And we did the foxtrot. After the party, we went to your childhood room and made love on the small bed, surrounded by dolls and pink cushions. In the afterglow of drink and sex and dancing, I said, why did you do it? It was a mistake, you said, and I wondered whether you'd have gone out with Shalom if he'd survived. He looked so different from me. It doesn't make sense, I said, and knowing what I know now, it didn't. I love you, Israel, you said. Let's not talk, it's the drink. That was the best day of my life. Thank you. I remembered Raziella's advice on forgiveness and muttered, Din din na, trakadu na na, din din na. You drank too much, you said. But you love me, don't you? I do, you said. And for some reason, always have.
Thank you, Ed. I wanted to just pick up on, in that passage, he obviously, Dr. Shine apologizes to Leora, his life, the love of his life. And that's something that comes up, this memoir he writes, it has a dedication in it, which is, to Leora, my light, I'm sorry. And I guess I'm interested in what the nature of that apology is, and also sort of zooming out, what is the nature of this memoir? I mean, Dr. Shine is writing it, we know the late Dr. Shine was writing it. Is it a confession? What is his motivation? To whom and to what ends is he confessing?
I think, bringing up the idea of a confession, it is a memoir, and I think we'll talk about the genre a little later. But it's a confession in the autobiographical sense, and a musical confession at that. The tone of apology, I was thinking of confession in the St. Augustine sense of confession, so more closely aligned with memoir as we think of it today. But as such, I thought there's this long-suffering woman, his wife, Ori, who, through Israel's self-obsession with his own traumas, we see in the background for much of the novel. And as the novel progresses, I think we start to see her more and more and feel her presence more and more. And I think by the end, his sense of sorrow is firstly that he didn't know her quite as completely as we all hope we know the people that we love. But also, at the end of his memoir, he realizes that his whole story is about her. And I think that we all know in life as well, the feeling of guilt towards the people that we love is very closely associated to the feelings of love we have towards the people we love. And I think that he's got fair reason to be pretty sorry. I mean, he's a lunatic, and he's also got very fair reason to be a lunatic. So, you know, there's a lot of background there and baggage. So I think that apologizing to her is his way of letting go. Now, the interesting thing, for those who've read the book, there's a lot of games that I play, and part of that is being the translator of a memoir. And whether Dr. Shine is dead or not, and I won't go into it too deeply, is an interesting question. And if you ever have enough time in your hands to scour the footnotes, there are a few breadcrumbs there suggesting things might be otherwise. I always wanted to not make it clear whether he was or not least because I could resuscitate him as a character in some dystopian caper in a different context. So I hope that sort of vaguely answers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested also, you just made reference there, so obviously the book is set up as a English translation of this Hebrew memoir, and it has, Ed is cited on the title page as translator of, rather than author of, and it has endnotes as well, like translator's endnotes.
Yes, not footnotes, you're right, yeah.
At times both funny and sort of moving. I guess a sort of very obvious but central question, like why this unusual and quite original narrative structure, what did it enable you to do in the story, and was it necessary to tell the particular story that you wanted to tell?
Yeah. So the prosaic reason that it came about was from some advice from a teacher, actually. And the advice from the teacher is when writing, always take your subject matter and both skew sideways and also create alienation between you and the subject matter. And I found that I was writing a book about Israel in English, and therefore to draw attention to that fact and put it up front would allow me to do certain things that I couldn't otherwise do. Perhaps the most important one of those is that it's a highly allegorical work, and creating a certain distance allowed me, I felt, to write a book where the main character is also representative or reflective of an entire country. And so that alienation then allowed me to do the endnotes and to create a sense that as a memoirist, he's somewhat unreliable. And I think when you write a memoir about a guy that has a mental breakdown and has certain, profound mental illnesses throughout his life, that giving him a certain level of unreliability was part and parcel of his character as a human being. So I just think it just allowed me to distance a little and play around a bit more with the idea of a memoir. And I forgot to say that Nikki, having completed her PhD, is I think moving towards creative non-fiction and I'm very I'm resistant to memoir as a genre, and so playing around with it was a great pleasure, just as a game.
Right. Well,
That's fine.
we'll leave the question of memoir. I'll launch a defence of it maybe later. But you mentioned, well, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say, but you mentioned before that you might be working on you might also be working to do the Hebrew version of Radio Tel Aviv. And yeah, could you say a bit about that? Given that it was written in English, although supposedly originally in Hebrew, how will it work to then translate it back to Hebrew? And
Right, so this is really, so it depends. So I like the game, so how many torturous layers I can add to it is just sort of entertaining to me. I'm not sure that the audience is going to particularly enjoy another layer of, so I'm working with a guy called Guy